Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Grace of Military Child and Life. Today, I'm here with Jan, who is a military brat, a military spouse. Her son joined the military, so military all around. But Jan, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you.
Well,
How
thank
are
you.
you?
I'm doing great. Got a little
Awesome.
bit of we have a lot of cedar that's around here, and so the allergies are just horrible.
I can imagine that. Yes, but thank you for being here. Tell me what it was like growing up as a military child to start off.
Well, I loved my life. Um, One of the downsides is that we moved every 2 years. So just about the time I got into the groove with friends and stuff in school, I had to move.
Yeah.
So from the time I was 6 months old, I started moving around the world. So it was kind of neat.
Yeah. What experiences did you have? What was it like moving and going to different places?
Well, I was always nervous going to first day of school,
Yeah.
in,
I
in,
can
in a new
imagine.
city.
Right.
Yeah, first day of school. But I didn't have too much of an issue. One of the things I don't have are childhood friends. There are
Yeah.
many people that I know and went to school with that had childhood friends, and I didn't have that because we moved every 2 years.
Right. That's the
It,
unfortunate part because I don't
that
even
is.
have many myself. And, you think back and everyone's like, my friend from kindergarten. I'm like, I don't talk to friends from kindergarten, really.
No, I don't remember anyone until high school,
Yeah. And
because
those
I
are
was
the
in,
formative years.
right, I was in the same city for 4 years. So that was nice.
Yeah. Especially
Yeah,
during high school. It's good to have
absolutely.
those 4 years of consistency.
Absolutely. Um, I think some of the things I remember are when we came back from Hawaii, we came back on a ship,
Mm.
and both my sister was just a toddler, and she fell and had a cut under her chin, so she was kept in the cabin. My
Oh, wow.
brother, who was older than me, he got so seasick, and so it was my dad and myself that we did all kinds of stuff on the ship. They had little games that you played, and
Oh,
one of them was
wow.
yeah, one of them was to make a hat. And so my dad got a ice bucket, the old uh, paper ice buckets. I don't know if you
Yeah.
remember those or not. Um, and I had a doll, Barbie doll. He stuck the Barbie doll on top of the bucket, put the bucket on my head, and we went to um, the hat contest. I don't know if I won or not, probably didn't, but it doesn't matter. It was just the fact of being with my dad all that time because my mom had to stay in the cabin with my sister and brother. So it was really nice um, uh, get together time with my dad. It was real close. It was very nice.
Yeah, and that's super cool that, that there were games and stuff to keep the kids occupied and families
Yeah,
occupied.
because it was
Um,
all military. It was all
yeah,
military families. Yeah.
that's so incredible.
Uh-huh.
And, what amazing memories because you don't necessarily always get those times to spend with your service member because they could be going on deployments or trainings or TDYs or numerous different things where they're not in the household. And so
Every
even couple
yeah,
hours make a difference.
every 2 years we would move. And so let's say we moved and my dad had shore duty. So that
Mhm.
meant that for those 2 years, he didn't go anywhere. And then the next 2 years, he would get sea duty. And
Mm.
so he would be on the ship that would go out and do, they'd go to Japan and all that kind of stuff, but he was still at home.
Yeah.
He would just go out on these little trips. So it wasn't like he was um, um, like the Army or Marines that would have to go over and fight wars.
Right.
Um, yeah,
Wow. That's still it's still hard and going through those things and back and forth and parent in and out. And I think that's sometimes almost harder on kids and on families when you
Yeah.
never know when your parent is going to be there or is going to be gone, and you're like, "Where's my dad? Where's my dad?"
Right. Right.
For me, my dad was Army, so we knew,
Yep.
like, he was going on a deployment. He unfortunately got injured on that deployment, but we knew it was gonna
Oh,
be 400 days, and we knew it was gonna we knew that, and of course, it's never certain until it happens, you know?
right.
But, we know these sorts of things, and, he was thankfully, gone for, a period of time, and it wasn't, that back and forth of here and gone and here and
Right.
gone and here and gone, and so I think, in a sense, having that here and gone is almost more challenging.
Yeah. A little bit.
Yeah. You never know, and you're constantly all over the place and constantly, wondering and
Right.
in that state of, "Okay, well, what's gonna happen now?" But that's what we're trained for as military kids, in a
That's right.
sense
Yeah.
to learn and adapt and overcome.
What's amazing is how much the military forces today really encompass the families. When
Yes.
I was a military brat, there weren't um, connections to other moms or other kids like there are today. I understand that there's so much support for the family back home while the service person is uh, in some country.
Mhm.
It's amazing how much they do today that they didn't do when I was a kid.
Yeah, and I find it so unfortunate that, you know, and when you were growing up that there wasn't that support because,
Right.
when I was growing up and especially living in a community where we were just surrounded by wounded service members and being a daughter
Ah,
of a wounded service member, that support was so, so needed
right.
to get through. And even the support groups that were in my schools for, of course, kids of wounded, but then also kids whose parents were deployed or the programs to help welcome, the kids who were moving in the middle of the school year. And so I
Right.
really think that those sorts of things are so impactful to military
Hmm.
kids and military brats when they're trying to navigate this lifestyle. And
Exactly.
it's hearing that it wasn't available, years and years ago. It's
Right.
so heartbreaking to hear because I know that I would not have felt the support that I had without what I did have.
Well, my mother was very resourceful.
Mhm.
So um, we had many military families around us.
Right.
And so that was our support,
Yeah.
were other families.
And I
You know, if
think
someone
that's the
was,
best support.
yeah, if someone was going to the commissary, they'd ask their neighbor, "Hey, you need anything at the commissary?" It was just this big family that you
Yeah.
could draw from.
Yeah. And I think, even for me growing up, we weren't necessarily surrounded by extended family like my parents, my grandparents,
Oh
and
no,
it was literally just the four of us, my mom, my dad, and my
yeah,
sister, and I. And the military family is who I really call my family. I
yeah,
have so many adopted, grandparents and aunts and uncles, and, those are the people who I turn to first. I pick up the phone and I
absolutely,
know that they are going to be on the other end. Brothers, sisters, cousins, everything, like, they they just become such an integral part of your life that, military friends become military family. And
right.
you have to live it to know it because I can say like, "Hey, this is my brother," like, and people are like, no?" And I'm like, "No, seriously, like, we grew up together. We experienced so much together." And, um, you know
Unfortunately, my sister was 6 years younger than me, and my brother was 6 years older than I am.
Oh my
So we
goodness.
were really separate generations.
Mhm.
By the time I was 6, my brother was 12.
Right.
Well, I didn't fit in with any of his friends,
Mhm.
and by the time I was 12, I had to take care of my 6-year-old sister, you know.
Yeah, babysitting.
Yeah, absolutely. Take care of your sister.
Yeah. And so those military friends and military families and brothers and sisters that you make along the way
Oh,
are
yeah.
so impactful. And, even that, you look back and you're like, "Oh, I forgot that person existed." Like, I don't talk to that person, to this day, but the impact they had on your life for maybe 2 years is
Right.
is more than words can speak.
I remember people, but I don't remember their names.
Yeah.
Um, uh, I remember there were like four of us kids that used to play together. I can picture them, but I can't remember their names.
Yeah.
And, but we had so much other things going on, that, by the time I had moved a couple of times, it just became natural.
Mhm.
We knew that in 2 years we'd be moving someplace else.
Yeah. And it's so it in a sense, when I look back and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like, I wish I could just talk to this person again." And yes, we have technology, and if I could remember, names, it's
Well,
so
that's
easy
right.
to just find someone.
If I could remember their names, I would certainly try and look them up. But,
Right. But
you know,
it's hard to when you're constantly it sounds bad, but, like, cycling through friends, and getting new friends and moving and meeting new people, it's hard to remember,
right.
you know,
Yep.
hundreds of names, um, and, where you knew them and where you met them, and, uh,
Right.
it's so fun to meet new people, but it's hard when you have to leave them, and that was always my
Well,
biggest struggle.
do you have any favorite places you lived?
Oh, so we were a reserve family, so we didn't move very
Oh,
frequently.
okay.
But I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, and
Okay.
I call that home. That is, it's, I love Cleveland. And
Yeah.
not many people say that. But I love Cleveland. And then, I spent a lot of from the age of 9 to 12 in San Antonio.
Oh,
And
okay.
then, at Fort Sam, and then my
Yep.
dad retired, and we moved to Cape Coral, Florida, so I've been here ever since, and we've been here about a
Ah,
decade, and so I think each place is just so special, and it's the hardest thing to pick, one
yep.
place. I couldn't imagine having more, to
Well,
choose.
my favorite place was Astoria, Oregon.
Really?
Yeah, it's just a beautiful little city right on the tip of the Columbia River, emptying into the Pacific. So it was just a wonderful place,
Yeah.
wonderful place. I went back once, but I'd love to go back again, spend a few days.
Yeah, and see, that's the thing is, like, you don't if you are living the life of a civilian child, you don't get to explore these places and find
True.
just the little, cities, the little random places. We'd think of traveling and we're like, "Oh, we wanna go to, Seattle or, Austin or, Nashville," these big cities where it's, like, very touristy, and we don't necessarily get the time to, as a traveler, you don't
Oh,
necessarily get the
oh
time to
no,
pick out these little cities, but then
exactly. Yeah,
as basically, a nomad or a gypsy, someone who doesn't have a home necessarily,
right,
military kid, you're going to all of these places and you're exploring and you have the time to go and plant roots for a little while, act like a local, experience what
right.
it is to be a local, and then, move on. And I think
Yeah.
that's so
Well, I
rewarding.
was born in Mississippi,
Mhm.
and that's where all our relatives are still in Mississippi or Ohio. Well,
Okay.
dad being in the Navy, all of our stations were around the coast.
Mhm.
So Virginia, Texas, California, Oregon, Washington, Hawaii, that kind of thing. So we saw them about every 2 years, depending on where we were headed. It was generally every 2 years we'd try to
Yeah.
stop in Mississippi and visit with relatives. They never
Yeah.
came to visit us, but
It's
we
hard to
we
get people to
visited
come
them.
visit you.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's so fun though, getting to experience, like, both, the West Coast and the East Coast and Hawaii and Central, Texas, pretty central, Gulf Coast, everything.
Yep. Well, when I was a wife, um, we went to the Azores. We spent
Mm,
what, 2 or 3 years in the Azores, which was
wow.
absolutely phenomenal. The Portuguese people are so sweet,
Wow. That's
and there's,
incredible.
oh yeah, and then I got to spend time in Japan as well. So
I love that.
that was really cool. Yeah, my son was born there, so
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's
yeah,
incredible. And just
yeah,
getting to experience a different country is so fun.
exactly. Yeah.
And, no matter where you go, like Japan is a popular one, or Germany or Italy, it's so fun to, I've only been to Scotland as a tourist, but
Oh, I'd love to go there.
it's gorgeous. You should.
I
Um,
bet.
but it is really fun to, we knew the locals. We had friends who lived there. And so being able to explore somewhere where, like I said earlier, you're not necessarily just going to those landmarks and
Right.
those touristy places. You're going to the places where it's like, oh, this is a little hidden gem. And experiencing a different culture is incredible, and I'm sure
Yeah.
you even realized, within the United States, like, we have so many different cultures, East Coast, West Coast, Gulf Coast, Hawaii, and so many different experiences just within one country.
Yeah. Yeah. And each place I've been, there's always something special about it.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
I
I
love
remember
that.
I remember as a wife, we were in Wichita, Kansas. He was in the Air
Ooh,
Force. And we found this restaurant that had the best Mexican food I've ever eaten.
I love that.
Even to today, even being here in San Antonio,
Yes, and San
you know?
Antonio, being there, we got some really good Mexican food,
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's more
really
Tex-Mex
good.
here than actual
Yes.
Mexican. It's Tex-Mex,
I could go
which is
for some Taco Cabana or any
absolutely.
day.
Absolutely.
Yes. No, that's so fun though, and, going all of these places, I am such a food person. Like, I could get food everywhere I go, and that's one of my favorite parts of traveling is going and trying the different cuisine of a city or a country, and, Texas was fun because we got the Mexican food and
Sure.
Tex-Mex. Um,
Right.
in Ohio, there's so many different cultures in Cleveland, so we could get anything we wanted, the best Italian food. We got so many different things there. And then here, in Florida, we get seafood and
Oh, I bet.
oh,
Yeah.
so much good food here too. And so that's really one of the fun parts is just traveling around and
Yeah.
eating different foods.
True, true. I guess I guess Oregon was really a nice place to live. Um, Out where we lived, out the back door, you go into the forest, and we would go. There were trails, and we would go down to the follow the trails down to the old what do you call them? Where the lumber trucks would go through. I can't think of the name. There's a proper name for it. But we go down there and play. And in fact, in Astoria is where I had my first spiritual experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was kind of special.
Yeah. And it's so fun, because, for me, it's hard to pick a favorite spot because so many monumental things happened, in my life
Absolutely.
in each place. But it's so fun when you're able to connect, a certain experience or a certain memory to a place.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, this makes it feel like home, or this made it feel like home. And, because you have to make every place feel like home
Oh, you
or
do. I
you're
mean,
going to be
that's where home
miserable.
is.
Yeah.
When my parents were still alive, home was in Southern California. Now
Mhm.
that they're gone and my brother's gone, basically it's my sister. Um, she's become the home spot in San Francisco. And my grandkids, I've got one in San Diego and one in Chicago, and they come home for Christmas to San Francisco. So that's where I'm headed in another week or so.
Yeah, and you have to make the most of what you can because if
Oh,
you
sure.
if you just live, a life of a military child, a military spouse, and you're like, oh, I hate it here. I hate it here. I don't want to be
There are a
here.
lot of there are a lot of spouses like that. I
Yes.
ran into many. I hate it here. I just want to go home. And I'm thinking, gee, didn't you know you were marrying a military person? Didn't you know you were going to be traveling?
Yeah. And I think that is it's such it's so hard to, think of that. And, you're traveling to so many different places, and there's so many opportunities, with doing that. And sure, I was the same way. I hated when we moved to Texas because I grew up in
Oh,
Ohio. And then I
yeah.
hated when we moved to Florida because I wanted to go back to Texas. Then once you stop and realize where you're at, and even if you're in the middle of nowhere, even if you're in a desert, even if you're in somewhere you don't want to be, I don't like the beach that much. I'd rather be in the mountains, and I'm at the
Yeah,
beach. So,
I'm not a beach person. It's
yeah,
definitely mountains. Yeah. Yeah,
yes.
definitely
So
mountains.
even if you're somewhere, that's opposite of where you would like to be, there's still so many opportunities that
Sure.
can come from it. And you just
Yeah.
really have to stop and, realize that. And, especially as a military spouse or military child, you're most likely only going to be there for a few years and then you're going to be up and moving again.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so important to have that positive outlook on so many different things within the lifestyle, moving and, deployments and everything that comes
Yeah.
with the lifestyle.
Well, luckily, my late husband didn't do many deployments. Being in Air Force, he was not a pilot. So, I didn't have that to worry about.
Yeah. And that is so when you don't have to worry about, deployments coming up, it's
Right.
so you can take the relief,
Yeah.
instead of when's the deployment gonna come up? When it's especially, times of war, it's like you never
Yeah,
know, and it could
it's
happen
true.
any second. And, um, it's fun when you don't have to to worry about that.
I remember I wish I had asked more questions of my parents, and unfortunately, I didn't think to ask more probing questions. I know my father was involved in a plane crash. It was
Mhm.
a um, amphibian plane, and they had to land, and he had a problem. He suffered from that for a while,
Yeah.
that crash, and he had just left 2 days before, left Honolulu before it was bombed. So he
Wow.
left Honolulu on the 5th of December, and they bombed it on the 7th of December. And my mother had no idea where he was.
Oh my
Couldn't
goodness.
contact him. No, she didn't know for almost a year.
Wow. I couldn't
Yeah,
imagine that.
awful, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because you just think about that and it's like you never know. And because technology wasn't as advanced and you can't just pick up the phone and call or
yeah,
send a text message. And so you're just left worrying and wondering. And a year is a long time.
it is. When we were in Hawaii, there was a typhoon, or no, typhoon, or I never can remember what type of storms come through Hawaii,
Typhoons are in the
or
Pacific and hurricanes are in the
cyclone,
Atlantic.
or I don't know what
Yeah.
it was. Anyway, it was a big storm that came through. And after it was over, we all jumped in the car, and Dad took us to the base so that we could make a call to the relatives in Mississippi to let them know we were okay. We didn't have long distance phones.
Wow.
You
Yeah.
had to do it on I don't know what you call it. Anyway, it's a military line that you sign up for, and you go and they hook you up with whoever you need to hook up with. I don't remember what it is now, but yeah, I remember
That's
we had to do that. Hmm.
yeah.
And then I also remember that there was a gentleman, another military man that lived about 3 doors down from us that committed suicide.
My
So I
goodness.
remember that too. There's so many things that I remember about different places. It's um, I'm just sorry my folks aren't here. I wish they were here.
Yeah, and, it's so incredible to think back and, those memories that you have that are tied to a specific location and being able to remember what happened and what went on and the different, the good memories, the bad memories, and everything in between of living on a base or being a military child or spouse. And, it's really incredible to think of literally everything that can go on.
It's funny. I don't have many bad memories.
Really?
No, I can't think of. Well, there was one incident in Hawaii where I was a bad girl, but I really don't remember any. I don't have many bad
Yeah.
memories,
It means
which
you had
is
a good
wonderful.
outlook on it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I loved it. I really did. I loved being a military um, brat, mother, wife.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm still not.
It's
I,
hard, I'm sure, to leave that life. It
it
was
is
hard for me to leave it
horrible.
as a child at, just 12,
My
not
entire life, all the
experienced
way up
it.
to, all the way up to, let's see. Hi, when did we divorce? Golly, I can't remember. But I guess, I don't remember. But it's when I divorced him that I no longer had military privileges, you
Yeah,
know.
and
And that
it's
was a big shock.
I'm sure I'm, like, dreading,
Yeah,
the day that it comes and I don't have it anymore because
yeah,
it's what I've known my whole life,
exactly.
you
Oh, I
know?
was born right into it. Yeah.
Yeah. And once it I've heard it feels like, just something getting ripped away from you, like a piece of
You
your
feel
life.
lost. You
Yeah.
feel lost. But the saving grace for me is that I live here in San Antonio that has bases all over. For the
Military
last,
USA.
yep, for the last week, every night around 8 o'clock, there's 3 or 4 planes that go over the house.
Wow.
I'm questioning why. What are those planes? It's new. I had
Yeah.
not. Um, so is it a buildup for what's going on in the world? It's always interesting to think about that.
Right. And because you have the experience of being part of a military family for so much of your life,
Yep,
kind of the signs and, what could be going on, and
yep.
those questions start coming immediately.
I do remember being in the Azores and there was a domestic plane crash,
Oh, wow.
and a lot of the military went to help with that crash. I don't remember much detail about it, but I just remember that part.
Yeah. Because, the military has some of the best equipment and,
Oh,
we're trained to, take care of those kind of situations. And
yep,
so, um, they just send the military out to
that's
deal
exactly
with
right.
it.
Yeah, too bad they don't do that in the southern border. Sorry.
No, I totally get that. Believe me. One reason we don't want to live in Texas right now.
Well, it hasn't really hit us here in San Antonio.
Yeah,
Uh, I understand it's worse in New York and Chicago,
right.
uh, and that's where my granddaughter is. I wish she'd come home, but
Yeah. There's so many things, like, I think we look at, politics and the outlook of this country, and we have such a different perspective than civilians and those who have no military life experience. Even just being a brat or a spouse, you
right,
have a deeper appreciation and you look at it and you're like, oh no, like, what are we doing?
right, yeah.
Yeah. I think, growing up, instilled in me was the sense of patriotism, and I think everyone needs that in their lives and,
Oh, sure.
exposed to military life or not, like, everyone needs that sense of pride of being an American and,
You know,
growing
my
up in this
sister,
country.
my sister doesn't have the brat mentality. I think when my dad retired, let's see, he retired in 60. 68, and she was only 11,
Mm,
so she didn't have the full blown military brat life like I
yeah.
have. Yeah,
And that makes a difference because
sure,
if you don't have that experience in those lifestyle, it's hard to think about it.
right,
And if you really think about it, then, obviously you can pull some of those experiences together, but at such a young age, even 11 being young, it's hard to put those pieces together
right.
and understand, the brat mentality.
Yeah, because she went to grade school, middle school, and high school all in one place,
Yeah,
Southern California,
and
and
that's rare.
yeah, that didn't happen.
No, you move all the time and
Yeah.
make new friends and, uh, you I think military kids are very well-rounded.
Oh, sure. You have to be. Of all the things that you run into or are forced into,
Yeah,
it makes change is no big deal.
right.
Change to some people is heartbreaking,
Mhm.
but for me, change is just that's the way it is. It's that way every day. Something changes, you know.
Yeah.
You
You
just roll with it,
experience the new normal,
right? And you just
and
roll with it. You don't get
yeah.
all up.
No, I change was so hard for me for so long, and then when it keeps getting forced at you and forced at you, you're like,
Sure,
"Okay, well, I just have to go with it now
that's
because
right.
I obviously don't have another choice."
That's the norm.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly. So
yeah.
the last thing I wanna ask you is if
Okay.
you could give a piece of advice to a military kid or another military spouse, what would you tell them?
I would have to say support your military member, whether it's your husband or um, your dad or your mom, or just support them as much as you can because it's harder on them
Mhm.
than it is on you, and to embrace change.
Yeah.
Um, and it's wonderful. I mean, every place I've been has been a different living experience because they're all different. Either it's a different culture, and even moving across from the East Coast to the West Coast is culture change,
Yeah,
you know? So I would say embrace change and support your military um, family member. That would
absolutely.
be, yeah, that would be it.
No, I love that, and thank you for so much for
You're
coming on the
you're very
podcast
welcome.
and sharing.
Very welcome.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.